took a bit longer. I was trying to change the screen rotation, the orientation. And I think the problem is that I scheduled the stream and now I can't change it. So I'm afraid we're gonna have to do vertical today. Sorry about that. So if one of you knows how to change it after the fact, please let me know. All right, okay. So let me just change this around. Okay, let's begin. Hello everybody, aloha, good morning. It's 8 a.m. here in Hawaii. I hope you are having a good start of the week. And I welcome you to week 4 of Aloha 24 September. Let me just put my phone in the holder so I can show you. Oops, let's see. Ooh, hold on. Something just popped up here. Nope. Okay. All good. All right. So today we are going to paint a Hawaiian owl, the Pueo owl. And because this month's theme is nightscapes, so landscapes at night, we're going to add a beautiful full moon and a few sparkly stars. So as you can see, I made the sky pretty light, and of course feel free to make it darker. I pretty much only did one layer on the sky, but you can just add more layers and make it darker so you'll have more contrast. However, I kind of like this pastel feel of this piece, and I think it makes the owl be more in the foreground. Okay, so how is the sound? Okay, Colleen, if you can't hear me, try to Sylvie, can you write that she can log out and log in again, or just go leave the stream, come back in? That would be good. All right, you guys. Okay. So I'm gonna turn the camera around and I'll see you for the painting session. Servus, Tanja. Na, warst du auf der Wiesn? So. All right, let's turn the camera around. Naturally, I've set it up for horizontal, so I might have to rearrange things a little bit. Hold on. Okay. Well, at least I'm using a vertically oriented paper today, so at least that works. Okay, for all of you who stream live on YouTube, always remember to set the orientation before you schedule your stream, because then you can't change it after the fact, as I just found out. Okay, let me look over to the chat. I hope that Colleen can hear me now. Okay, yeah, seems like... Everybody can hear me, but maybe... Hey, Colleen, Colleen can also try another device. Sometimes changing equipment, changing the device works. Going from your phone to a laptop or a computer, plugging in some headphones even, maybe. Okay, everybody can hear me now. Excellent. So I'm going to start just with a quick overview how we're going to approach this today. So we'll start with a sketch, and then I'm going to continue painting the first layer of the moon and the owl. Then we'll let this dry, and then we'll paint the sky. The reason why I'm doing that before we finish the owl is so that we can paint the owl kind of like on top of the background. So, and then we'll just add the details with crayon in the last step. But let's start with a sketch. If you've received my newsletter yesterday, then you have the line drawing template. So I've prepared my sketch here. However, I want to show you how to do the sketch. I'm going to use a brush pen for this, just a black marker. So you please do it in pencil or in a water-soluble colored pencil. But just so you can see the lines better, I'm going to use a black pen. Okay, let's put this to the side. I'm going to zoom in a little. Okay. Hi, Taka-chan, Daisuki. Hi, 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 hi. All right. Okay, so you can start with the moon and have this funky device here. Oh yeah, my circle maker. You can just use whatever round thing you have, maybe just a washi tape roll. And then we'll place the moon approximately so that the bottom side of the moon is at the center line of our paper. Well, of course, it depends what kind of paper you use. If you're using square format, then maybe you'll want to place it a little bit differently. But try to place it a bit further down than you would maybe usually do it. So not at the top. And then for the owl, we'll start with an egg like this. And then you start here approximately in the center of the top of the egg and just draw a curved line like this. And this is going to constitute the wing, one of the wings. And then about a third in from the top, just do another curved line, and this is going to be the head. So we pretty much already have the basic shape of our owl. Now we're going to refine the head. So you follow the curved line here, and then it dips a little bit here on the side. And then for the eye, place it approximately here. So Hawaiian Pueo owls have a very distinct eye shape and eye marking. It almost looks like they put on some mascara. So it's a very dark part around the face that looks a bit like this. Let me show you a photo so you can see what it looks like. I have my wonderful Hawaiian bird book here, which contains not just Hawaiian birds, but also birds that live here permanently, permanent vacation. So you can see bright yellow eyes, and then around the eyes, you know how I'm gonna kind of zoom in. Does that happen to you? It happens to me all the time. It's kind of embarrassing, but yeah. So bright and yellow eyes, and then the beautiful black markings around the eyes, and almost like a heart shape face with some white markings. Now I have to say they don't all look exactly like this one, but the overall markings are very similar, especially those dark markings around the eyes. So if you compare this to a barn owl, has a similar heart-shaped face, but overall the look is very different. It's a very light colored face and very dark eyes. So definitely a big difference. And I think overall, these are rather small owls. As far as I have seen, I've seen a few here on the Big Island. They're not very large, and you can see them during the daytime, which is pretty cool. So this is not a very I mean, maybe they're night active, but they are also day active. I think that's what makes them stand out a little bit from other owls. Okay, back to our little Tamagotchi here. So we drew in the eye, and then above the eye, draw in a little curved line like this, and it will eventually go into the beak. And don't draw the beak too small. So this is, considering how small the animal is, the beak is actually rather big. Over here on the left-hand side, we're going to indicate the other eye. It's just a little thing here on the side. Okay, if your head shape is a bit too wonky, you can of course reshape it a little bit, make it nice and round, and then here on the right-hand side, it does get a bit flatter or more flat like this. Okay, and then you're all good. Then for the rest of the body, we'll follow our egg shape here and then continue the line down to the tip of the line we drew. This is one of the wings. Finish up the belly on the right-hand side. And as you can see in my final painting, I actually left out the feet and the whole bottom part of this. So we're gonna cheat a little bit. No feet for this owl today. Hiding in the feathers. And then we'll have another wing, or the tip of the wing, peek out here on the left-hand side. It's kind of coming in from here, so they crisscross like this. And if you like, you can already draw in a few more of the details, or you can just do this later with the crayons in the last step. I think it really depends how much you need for your drawing to feel comfortable with starting your piece. So for me, I tend to just outline a few things, and then I'd rather go in and put down my first watercolor layer. So I would normally not even put in the plants, but you can just go ahead and draw a few lines where you want to place the grass. And then we'll go over with crayon to give it a very organic shape. Are you guys talking about Oktoberfest? Is that what I'm seeing in the chat? Oh yes. Oh, Brezen. Oh yes, yes. So the other day we went to a restaurant here in Kona, and they have what they call pretzel sticks. And they're actually this size. I mean, you know, for somebody from Bavaria, Germany, it's still tiny, but they were actually real soft pretzels. Very delicious. And they serve them with both a cheese sauce and a mustard sauce. So for all my Bavarians out there, or pretzel lovers, you should try it. I was very suspicious. Pretzel with mustard? But I gotta say, it's delicious. All right, so has Tanya been to the Oktoberfest yet? Logo? Oh yeah, okay. Hab die Story verpasst. Mensch, ey. All right, let's move on to our watercolor paper. And today I'm actually not using watercolor paper. This is, I believe, mixed media paper by Hahnemühle. So Hahnemühle decided a while ago to come up with a series of different papers that are a bit more ecologically friendly, because we all know cotton uses a lot of water to grow. So they decided they're gonna come up with some different papers. So at this point, I believe they have agave, bamboo, and some kind of grass. Ooh, I can't remember. I'm sure one of you remembers. Das neue Hahnemühle Papier mit dem Graszeug drin. Can't remember the name. Let me tell you, these papers are more difficult to work with, so I would not recommend this for first-time watercolorists. This is a bit more of a advanced paper, I'd say. And the easiest one from this new series to work with is the agave, in my mind. What I do like about this is that it has a very fine texture, so it works really well with crayons of all sorts. And it gives it a really nice, almost like a satin finish. And the markers just, or the crayons, I should rather say, they just adhere to the paper really well. So if you want a paper that has watercolor paper qualities, but is maybe a bit more smooth, and you care about the ecological aspect, then by all means try out this paper. Okay, so okay, Sylvie says agave or hempa. I'm not sure. I think hempa is another company, isn't it? I don't think Hahnemühle makes a hemp paper, or do they? Handvoll Gras. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you guys, if you look it up, Hahnemühle papers, then you'll come up and you'll find it, I'm sure. Okay, let's move on to the other supplies. Today I have my handmade Aloha watercolors. I'm going to use today vanilla, that's a titanium buff, opera pink. I have Kohola here, that's a synthetic indigo. I have jade vine, that's a phthalo turquoise, and kaleo, which is a Van Dyke brown, very dark brown. If you layer this on really heavily, it looks almost black, just like the indigo. I have my Neocolor 1 crayons today. So these are the crayons that are not water soluble. So as opposed to the Neocolor 2, which you might be familiar already, these are just the regular wax crayons, and by all means you can just use some cheap crayons today, like Crayola or something else. It doesn't have to be these fancy ones. I do love that they have this very bright yellow, and also here, a nice dark brown, which is called Toledo brown. So I think for today's project with the owl, these colors are fabulous. But as I said, feel free to use other crayons. And of course, you can use water-soluble crayons as well. So pretty much doesn't matter which crayons you use today. I have a few brushes. I have a large brush to cover the background area and to do some quick washes. And I have two smaller round brushes, size 6 and size 4. These ones here are Shimoni, and this one is by Jackson's. It's a quill brush, size 2. I always find it really confusing. Every company does different sizes, it seems, when it comes to quill brushes. So quill brush size 8 might actually be smaller than another company's quill brush, size 2. So very confusing. I'm starting with a layer of water on the moon and on the complete owl. So just lay down some water, fill out your moon shape and your owl shape. So just go over the whole shape very quickly with your large brush. And next we're gonna go over to our buff titanium white. And I'm not using a palette for this part because I really just want to lay down my first wash of color. And if you like, you can already drop down a little more paint in the area of the moon that we want a bit darker later on. So grab some more paint, really concentrated paint, less water, more paint, and drop it here towards the bottom of the moon. And make sure that you actually don't paint strokes, but just drop it like this. So just drop, drop, drop. And then next we're gonna cover the whole owl with a base layer of our buff titanium white. You know, I haven't done a live stream since the beginning of the month and it feels so long. I got used to doing those every week and it's just been, yeah, I missed it. So I'm glad we are doing one today, even though I had some technical issues figuring out the right orientation. Okay, my dears, I'm gonna go and dry this layer with my hairdryer and I'll be right back. This is taking forever. Hold on, let me remove some of the excess water here from the moon. Otherwise, I'm gonna be drying for a long time. If you have the time and the patience, I do recommend that you let the moon layer dry naturally. Just because, as you can see here, I do have some drying edges from the fact that I've speed dry this with my hairdryer. On the other hand, this is the moon and we're going to add a few more layers later on, so I'm not too concerned about it. Okay, so be right back. Just another go over this whole thing with my hairdryer. It's still not dry. Okay, I'm just gonna be a bit careful when I put in the background now. Another tip here, you saw me dab the moon with a paper towel. If you have a very textured paper towel, maybe even with a pattern on it, and use the whole side, you might end up having that pattern on your paper and on your paint. So in that case, I do recommend that you just use a dry brush to soak up excess water. I'm picking up some paper with my large quill brush. Gotta rinse it out first, get rid of the buff titanium white. And now we're just gonna lay down some water for our galaxy night sky background. Hi, puppies. Oh, guess who just came in the house running? Hi. Hi, puppies. Okay, I'm back. Some more water. If you want crisp edges, you can, of course, use washi tape, but I'm just going to play it by ear today, just laying down water and not really caring about how my edges look like. Make sure you don't draw the water into your moon or your owl shape. You can, of course, use a smaller brush to get really close to your shapes here. So the water acts like a barrier for your paint. So the paint will only go where you've laid down the water. I have a nice sheen of water on my paper. And another tip, don't worry too much about getting the exact shape of the owl, because later on we're going to add so many details with crayon and more watercolor that we are going to, make our owl a bit fluffier. It's going to go a bit outside of the shape we've already painted. So don't worry about this too much. Same with the moon. Your moon can have a little white glow. So if there is a little bit of white paper visible, don't worry about it. Okay, so you want to end up with a nice sheen of water, very regular. And then we're picking up some phthalo turquoise, and for this part I will be using my palette, which is probably off camera at this point. Hold on, let me rearrange things real quick here. Okay, here's the palette. Here is my paint. Picking up some more water. So I want a nice watery mix. Now we can just drop in the paint. And again, you can see me dabbing my brush a bit more, which in this case is actually due to the way this paper is. So this paper does not like rubbing a lot. The fibers of the paper are a bit more sensitive than cotton fibers, so they do tend to come up a bit more easily. So even though this paper is 90% bamboo and 10% cotton, so it does have some cotton, it's a bit more, it requires a bit more careful handling. So you don't have to be as careful. You can just slob the paint on with big strokes. You can also use a flat brush for this part if you like. Up next, some indigo. You can either mix it with the turquoise you already have on your palette, or you can do it separately like I'm doing here, and drop that onto your paper. Now if you tilt your paper a little bit, so you pick it up here just a little bit. I'm not sure how much of an angle that is. You can let your paint run down, and if you feel that this is too much drama, then just leave it flat. But remember, you can also push your pigment around a little bit with the help of your brush. So you can push it back a little bit, you can push it over to the other side, you can start tilting your paper in different directions. And don't panic if you feel that your paint is doing wild things, because first of all, everything's gonna dry much lighter. So all of this is not gonna look as dark as it looks right now. So less drama once this is dry. Isn't that nice? So when things calm down, we're gonna have less color drama on our paper. And last but not least, ooh, almost did it. Almost dipped my brush into my tea. Let me put my tea way far away here. Okay. I'm rinsing my brush. I'm picking up my opera pink. You can also use quinacridone pink for this part, or really just any kind of pink you have. I should say you should use a transparent pink. I think that would be true for all colors you use for this background. If you use very opaque colors, you're gonna have a very different effect. So we do want to work with the white of the paper to make this background look a bit translucent and for the paints to really mix beautifully. So for this part, you can go and tilt your paper the other way, for example. If you want your pink part to be a bit larger, to mix and blend more with the other colors. Another tip for you guys, if you choose different colors to blend for a background or whatever, make sure that you test them out beforehand to see what they look like once they blend. If you use complementary colors and then you mix and blend them, you might just get a muddy brown mess. So you gotta try first. Usually things like indigo and pink or blue and pink mix very well, you know, because you'll have purple. Even though this looks a bit green and it is a turquoise color, it does mix very well with pink and indigo, but I only know this from experience. You might have trouble, or you might run into trouble mixing green and pink or green and red, because that usually makes brown. So just as a tip, before you cover a large area of your painting, mixing different colors, you just try on a scrap piece of paper what those blends and mixes look like. Otherwise, you know, you might be sad that your background is just brown. Bad weather. Now, if you want your background to be a bit darker, you can, of course, add a bit more indigo, for example. Make sure number one, you use your mixed watered down version, and number two, that you add it to a part that is still wet. If you go in to your paper and add this paint where your paper has already dried, you're gonna see it. You're gonna have drying edges, you're gonna have paint strokes visible. So for a very smooth gradient, you wanna make sure you add the paint only to the area that is still wet. If you want even more drama, paint the area around the moon in indigo. You'll have a lot of contrast and the moon will pop out more. However, bear in mind that the actual focus of the painting is the owl. So we don't want the moon to be too prominent. we do want the owl to stand out the most, so I wouldn't go too dark on this part. I'm rinsing my brush. Hi, Leo puppy. Hello, happy Monday. Hi. Hi. Do you want to see what we're painting? Oh yeah. Are these your pretty paws? Hi. Okay. He wants down again. All right. First he wants up and then he wants down. Okay. How are we doing? Are you guys painting along? How's it going? Are you creating some nice blends? Are you guys still talking about food? Yeah, I can see you're my people. Totally can see that. Yeah, Sylvie's painting and talking about food. Again, totally my people. Okay, so everything is really wet. Now, I do recommend that you wait until your background is wet. If you want to use a hairdryer, be really careful. You can see how much puddle I have on my paper. So if you use a hairdryer now, you're gonna probably just splatter the paint around. So be very careful. I will continue with my moon and my owl, but again, I'm doing this bearing in mind that my background is still wet. So I gotta be really careful, because as soon as I drop a bit of my white into the background, naturally it's gonna spread like crazy. But I don't want to go and use my hairdryer now because it's gonna be a chaos, a mess. So picking up my buff titanium white and my size 6 round brush, I picked up some water and I'm going over my moon shape again with water very gently. Just gently touch the moon with some water. And then pick up a very concentrated amount of your buff titanium white and drop it into the moon. So we want to drop it like this. Again, no painting, just dropping in the paint with some dabs of your brush. So we want to cover the bottom and the side here. And then we can also dab it here into the center. Make this very organic, very random. And then we're gonna add a line of dots here on the right hand side. And you can see that my paper was dry on this side. So that's fine, not a problem. I'm just gonna improvise here a little bit and draw a few lines indicating a moon crater. So I'm only doing this because my paper was dry on this side. Don't worry about it if it's all wet, because that's what you were supposed to do. If you like this effect of the lines, then you can just let your moon dry and then add the lines. Make sure you follow the natural shape of the moon. So don't do straight lines, do them curved. Mali o. Okay, I got too crazy playing puppies now. So if you hear strange sounds, it's not me. It's not Mr. Coffee. I will blame it on the dogs. Okay, so let's tackle the owl next. Hmm. Who's late to the party? Hi, Linda. Grüezi. I don't hear Swiss German often in this chat. Okay, so we painted the background, we painted the moon, and now we're gonna tackle the owl. So I'm gonna grab my Van Dyke brown and my vanilla, and I kind of now realize that I actually forgot to pull out one of the colors. Hold on, let me see. I have it in here. I do. So this is my Ercolano red. Oops. Which is a very reddish brown. So forgot to mention this one because we're going to use that now. Okay, so the name of the color is Koa. So again, this is an Ercolano red, a very reddish brown. You can also mix this color by using brown and yellow ochre and a tiny bit of red. I think Tanya actually likes to call this fox brown. And I'm also going to pick up my Van Dyke brown. Again, if you don't have this, you can mix brown with black. Find a clean spot on my palette here. Okay, my mom is asking if she saw Malio's paw earlier in the video, and that was actually the other dog. That was Leo, Kaleo. So his name is the same as my paint. So I actually named the paint after one of the dogs. Which is silly, I know. Okay, so we're gonna go back to our Ercolano red, reddish brown, fox brown, or Pueo owl brown. And this is a very watery or watered down brown. Okay, just follow me along here with the curve. And then also just put down some brown around the eye. If you're painting along and you also have the problem that your background is still wet, just really make sure you don't touch the background with your brush at this point. If you want to be absolutely sure, just please wait till your paper is dry, or use a hairdryer, or use a dry brush to mop up the excess water and then dry it. Next step, with very swift strokes, using the belly of your brush, the side of your brush, just go around your owl and add quick strokes. Now this is my favorite part. I mean, I love painting night skies. I always have loved doing galaxies and night skies, but doing those quick strokes and then later on going back in and refining the shape, yeah, I really love that. And then next, pick up your dark brown and drop in some dark brown into the shapes you have just painted with your reddish brown. So at this point, the paint should still be wet. If it's not wet anymore, then just choose those spots that you can see are still moist or wet and then drop in the paint. Hallo Ulrike, hallo Letty. So if you're late to the party, no problem at all. You just missed out me having technical issues with the orientation, and then having a lot of water on my paper, so you can do it. You can do it all better. And I just want to repeat it again. If you want a clean, crisp edge around your painting, make sure you use some tape to tape your paper first. Okay, I'm picking up some more of my Van Dyke brown, laying it down on my palette, mixing it with a little bit of water. Oops, that was actually quite a bit of water. That's fine. Okay, and now we're gonna go back in and do some quick strokes with our Van Dyke brown here towards the bottom of our owl. Okay. Then we'll go in and emphasize this shape here around the head a little more. Drop in a bit more paint here and here. Again, if you want to help the blend along, you can pick up your paper just a tiny bit and tilt it towards you, so the top is towards you a little bit. And this way the dark brown will melt into the reddish brown and you'll get a nice blend and gradient. So even though I lay down a layer of the buff titanium first, it looks almost white. So because of that, I'm going to go in and add a little bit more of the buff titanium white. If you want to avoid that, you can just make sure that you add a little bit more of this buff titanium in the first step. But because I didn't add enough, I'm going to have to go and, dry this again with my hairdryer. I'm going to be very careful because I still have a puddle going on. That's actually better now. All right, my dears, I'll be right back. Hi, Mr. Coffee. You leaving?
Yeah.
Take the peaches.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and remember, Costco only opens at 10, yeah?
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
So you can see really well here what the hairdryer does, which does not look nice. So using the hairdryer, can create these drying edges. If you have this problem, what you can do is that you can use a large brush, clean brush with water, wet your whole background again, and then kind of drag the paint down. Okay, I'm gonna demonstrate just a little bit. So, clean water and very carefully, very gently wet your paper again. And theoretically, you have to do this to the whole background again, so you don't get any more drying edges. I won't do this today, though. I just wanted to show you how theoretically it's done. So wet the whole paper and drag your paint down. And this way you could actually even add a second layer if you want your your background to be darker. Okay, so I'm just gonna dabble a little bit like this, so it looks a bit better. Okay, back to our owl and our number 6, size 6 round brush. Okay. Bye, Alina. Good night. Well, it is already, I think in Romania it's already 10 p.m. So that's pretty late. Okay, size 6 round brush. I'm going directly into the paint, so no palette, and then just adding strokes in between my browns. Again, I'm doing short little dabs. Dab, dab, dab. And remember, we're gonna go and add more details and texture with crayons later, so no need to kind of like paint around the brown or anything. Just very freely, quickly add in some paint strokes with your buff titanium white around the eyes here. All right. I think I forgot the other wing here in the back, so I'm just gonna add this real quick where they crisscross and overlap. Okay. Looking at the moon, if you want your moon to have even more distinct moon, how do you say, craters, go in, dab in some of your vanilla, buff titanium, hold your brush upright, and then add some lines, curved lines, following the shape of the moon, like this. Okay, so we have a few more steps ahead of us. So again, I'm going to dry everything, and then I'm going to add the face details. So here, adding some dark watercolor, and in the same step we're going to add stars with white gouache. And then in the very last step, we're gonna go over the owl with crayons and also add in the grass with crayons. So I'd say it's like 3 more steps, but also some more drying to do before that. Thank you, Mom. I'm looking over to the chat. And yeah, this is kind of like a messy fix I did there with the sky. So I do definitely recommend that when you paint nice night skies and galaxies and you want a smooth gradient to not use a hairdryer. Or to, you can also use some 100% cotton paper cold press. It just tends to be better for mixing and blending layers. But yeah, let it dry naturally is my biggest tip here for a very smooth gradient. Okay, I'm gonna go and dry this one more time and I'll be right back. And here we are, back again with more drying edges. It's like I have a large comet coming in from there, isn't it? Okay, again, as I said before, you can fix this by just not using a hairdryer. No, just kidding. Go over it with water and paint your background again, but I'm not gonna do this now because we want to continue with our little owl. And for the owl, I'm gonna zoom in a little more. Okay, let's do some details on this little fella. So I'm picking out my number 4 round brush. You can of course go even smaller with your brush, especially if the size you're painting in is smaller. Then because we're doing details now, I can use the paint straight from the pan. And because I'm right-handed, I'm going to start on the left-hand side of my owl. And just continuing to draw in some darker shapes here that I drew in pencil in the beginning. And then for the eye, which is the most important part, I say, of the owl, I am holding my brush pretty upright so I can make use of the tip of the brush. If you're feeling you don't have a very steady hand when you do this part, you know, you can also use a different medium. If you don't want to paint this with a brush, you can use a colored pencil with a very sharp point, or you can even use a fine liner. Just, you know, make it easy for yourself. This should be fun, and if you're not in the mood to paint tiny details with a brush, then just use something else. Just continuing here. To paint the very dark part around the eye of my owl. And this is a very distinctive feature of the Hawaiian Pueo owl. Also the fact that they have a lighter colored shape around the eyes with those dark markings right at the eye, and then here around the head a few darker feathers as well. And then continuing throughout my owl, I'm just gonna add a few small strokes, mostly on the right hand side here, with a little bit of a drier brush and more pigment. Okay, I'm looking over to the chat and Sylvia is making a super big mess here. Yeah, kind of like me. I made a big mess. Don't worry about it. We'll just add a lot of stars and maybe a comet. A comet or a shooting star. I mean, honestly, guys, if you feel like your background looks really terrible, you can also add some silhouetted trees. You know what I mean? Just do not just grass, but you can have some tree branches come in from the side to cover up a potentially messed up background. So always stay open for some other options here. Okay, so until this is dry, I'm gonna go and add some stars to my background. And for this part, and I think I didn't mention this in the beginning, I will be using some gouache, white gouache. I still have white gouache on my palette, so I'm going to reactivate this one. So this is traditional gouache, which you can reactivate with water. There's also something called acryla or acrylic gouache, which is based on an acrylic binder. And once that type of gouache dries, it's dry. It's like plastic. You cannot reactivate it anymore. This one here is traditional gouache, so easy to reactivate. Okay, so I'm doing the just, you know, brush on brush tapping method for this one today. If you want to make sure that there are no stars on your owl, you can just cover up your owl. Make sure though it's dry before you cover it up. So I'm not going to worry about stars getting onto my owl. I created some nice halos here because my paper is still wet in this point. I almost feel like today's session is more about fixing mistakes or fixing some happenings than me showing you how it's done. I'm rinsing my brush, I'm drying it off, and I'm picking up some of that white gouache again. So it's basically dabbing, dab, 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 picking up, wiping, going back in. So what are we going to do with this big messy spot over there? I wonder. It truly does look like a comet at this point. Some other, maybe a second moon, maybe another big planet. I could like do a Saturn or something in here. Little UFO? Okay. So we have a few stars. Let's add some more manually, so not tapping the brush. Oh, and by the way, if you want to have some more inspiration how to create stars, I do have another video up there, which is, I believe, completely mess-free actually, with different ways to add stars. So, you know, using a toothbrush, using pastels, using a regular brush. I'm going to link that video down below in the description if you want to check it out. But honestly, I mean, how fun is this? This is a live stream. There will be mistakes, there will be accidents happening, all the things. And I think it's probably the best way for me to explain to you how you can potentially fix something, or, you know, just go with it, just live with it. I'm picking up my smaller size brush again, my number 4, holding it upright, and then from the center of the star outwards with a quick, very gentle stroke. I'm barely touching the paper. Well, I guess I didn't touch it at all because nothing's happening. Moving towards the edges of the paper like this. So for this part, instead of a brush, you can also use another tool with a sharp tip. So you could use a toothpick, or you could use pretty much anything that has a very sharp point. And you can set down a glob of white paint, and then whatever sharp tool you have, not sharp, I mean pointy, just carefully drag out the paint to create some glowing larger stars. Make sure you don't place them too uniform. So just make sure you place your stars a bit randomly around your painting. Make your stars larger, so just paint in a larger circle. And then you also have some really small ones. Maybe you have some clusters with little stars closer together. So in order to make it look more natural, you want an uneven distribution. You want a few stars to appear larger. So you'll just have a larger circle and you have tiny little itty bitty stars. It's of course very effective to place your stars in areas that are dark, because then the contrast will help you make those stars visible. So down here you will hardly notice the stars because it's a very light background color. And naturally in those parts where the indigo is strongest, you'll see most of the stars. Okay, Colleen's taking off. Bye! Okay, I'm rinsing my brush and I'm checking on my owl to see if it's dry. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, I have another tip for you. If your owl is not dry, you can just go over your owl with water-soluble crayons. So not the regular wax crayons, just use the water-soluble ones because they will blend with your watercolor and you won't scratch or rip your paper. But because my owl is dry, I'm just using the regular ones today. I have 4 different colors. I have 3 different types of brown. So this one, ooh, look how inventive. They called it brown. Neocolor 1, and this is Toledo brown. Isn't that a city somewhere in Spain, I think? Toledo. This is ochre, and then I have a bright yellow, which again, they called yellow. So starting with the brown crayons, you can just go over, let me put it this way. So areas that are already light or that we painted light with watercolor, you're gonna go over those areas with your lightest brown. In this case, I'm using an ochre, and just add some texture to the lightest areas. Then with your next darker brown, you do the same thing, but now you'll just go over the areas that are a bit darker. So in this case, it's my brown crayon. Always make sure you follow the natural curve and the natural shape of your owl. So up here, draw in the circle. Over here on the back side of the owl, follow the curve of the back. here for wing number 1. Follow the wing shape. And here with your crayon, you can draw in the distinction between the wing and the belly. So you can draw in a line here. Don't make it too harsh because this owl is pretty much very sleepy. It's all puffed up. It's just a little happy pom-pom. So no need to really go in with too many details. If you don't want to, you don't even have to do the crossing wings here in the back. You can just create a nice, happy, big fluff ball. And then with your darkest brown, our Toledo brown, you go over your darkest parts. So I think what you can achieve with the crayons is not just texture, but you can also create some more shadows. You can create areas that will appear a bit darker, and somehow it makes it also look more three-dimensional. I think it's a really interesting effect, especially with crayons, but I think it generally in mixed media. Once you mix different mediums, you have some very interesting effects. And you can really build up your layers in a way that, of course, you can pull some of this off with just using watercolor, but I think using a completely different medium gives you a few different options. It all, of course, depends whether or not you like the look. So it will never look as no, I should probably say it in a different way. It will look very different from you doing this piece completely in watercolor, of course. You will see more strokes, you will see texture, you will see the texture of the paper coming through. Whereas the watercolor kind of melts in with the paper, the crayons will kind of sit on top of the texture of your paper. So if you're using cold pressed paper with a lot of tooth, you'll definitely see the texture of the paper. And now with the yellow crayon, all we're going to do with the yellow is draw in the yellow of the eyes. So this is the shining star moment for the yellow crayon. Ta-da! That's it. This was all it did today. And then go over to your grass. And instead of just drawing a line with the same amount of pressure, I want you to kind of press down harder and less hard with your crayon, and you will naturally have thicker and thinner areas. So think of it almost as if you did some calligraphy or lettering, or if you've never done that before, just take my word for it. Harder, lower, lift it up, press it down. And then with a slightly darker crayon, just do the same thing again and move slightly next to your first line of crayon. And don't try to do, the same pressure thing as with the first one. Just randomly press down harder and more lightly. So this way you'll have a very organic looking grass texture here. And if you like, you can go over everything even one more time with your darkest crayon. Okay, let me look over to the chat. Letty says that adding the crayon really makes the owl look more lively. I agree, right? It adds some dynamic range. And Trinke says hi. Hi, Trinke. All right, here we go. We have added some crayon texture to the owl, and we added some more plants here. Let me put these down. Okay, so, man, look at my comet. Okay, this was our original piece. It's the same paper. It's very interesting. I used it in this way, so it's a much smaller piece of paper, and it was a lot easier to blend the colors in the background without having any type of problems with drying edges or anything. So what I realized today is when I paint the same motif larger, I ran into totally different problems, which I did not anticipate. So, you know, having the background not getting dry because larger area, lot more water, and hence the drying edges. So again, I know I said this before, but if you are maybe watching the video first before you paint it, make sure you can either use cold press watercolor paper, 100% cotton, make your life easier. Maybe you start with a smaller size like I did here, and do not use a hair dryer to dry the background layer. Just let it dry naturally so you have a beautiful, wonderful gradient without any interruptions or gradient or drying edges. Or alternatively, if you end up with something like this and you totally hate it, you could just draw a tree silhouette to cover it up. Or, of course, you can, before you add the stars, so if you're still in the background stage of your painting, just cover the whole background again with clean water and just add another layer and then let that dry naturally. So I hope I summarized all the tips I have for creating a smooth background. Tilt your paper a little bit for even nicer blends and to be able to make all the paint go into the same direction rather than going, you know, all across the paper. And yeah, I think that's it for my tips on the background. Okay, so this piece definitely requires some patience and of course some practice. All right, I apologize for the technical issues in the beginning today and that I had you wait for a while before I was ready to start, and I'll make sure next time that I have the correct orientation of the video in place again. Hold on, let me just quickly turn around the camera one more time so I can say, where is that? Here we go. Yeah, I love the stream, and I think honestly having these kind of things happening, and I'm not talking about the orientation, I'm really talking about, you know, how the background didn't want to dry the way I imagined it. First of all, you know, I can explain how to deal with a situation like that, which I might not even think about when it just all works out every time. And well, you know, I'm just human as well, and mistakes happen, and it's totally fine. I can just paint this motif again, or I can just live with how it turns out. After all, watercolors just always do what they want. I hope you enjoyed this stream. I'm gonna introduce next month's theme very soon, but I kind of want to give you a little hint because I know you guys love painting animals. So we're gonna stay with the animal theme, yeah, team animal. It's true too. All right, I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful week and talk to you later. Bye. Aloha.